that. You're not interested.
Well,
What do you think about spiritual healing?
I think it's psychosomatic. And it's very real. I think if you believe, it will. This is psychological as well as spiritual. And this can affect your ductless gland system, and your ductless gland system is the source of your blood chemistry. And this can produce physiological changes. I think you can have spiritual killing too in that sense. We've been through this before. You know, the witch doctor who was going to knock off the tribesman who's violated a major taboo, and when he gets to the ritual, the tribesman is so frightened he gets enough adrenaline in his system, it ruptures the heart muscle, and he's dead. This must have happened many times. Right.
Oh, that's definitely
I hold, pardon me,
No, go ahead.
I'm more interested in what you got to say.
Or if your faith, as it happened with the woman who takes Jesus to him, says your faith made you well, made you whole.
This is not psychosomatic.
Well, then why wouldn't your faith do it now just the same as it would then?
Because you're lacking the presence of a creator who can reach directly into potentials and produce direct changes in actual.
I could see that
can't be done then.
from me.
Remember, Emmanuel
Emmanuel.
Emmanuel warned Michael. He said, now, please remember, we're going to strip you down as far as we can strip you for this incarnation, but there are certain creator prerogatives which are inalienable from your personality, and they still will center there in potential. So that if you should will to any superhuman action, it'll happen. And if Jesus were here today, incarnated as a human being, the same things would happen. In terms of chemistry, we're missing a catalytic agent. Here, sodium will burn in air. That statement is almost a fact, but not quite. If it's dry enough, it won't. There's always some moisture present, except under laboratory conditions of desiccation. And if you finally desiccate that environment, the sodium will not burn in air because it can't get started. Now, when Jesus was here, you have hooked into a human being, a real human being, with all his emotions and sentiments. You have hooked in the creator prerogative of a Son of the Universal Father and Eternal Son. And what happened in Jesus' presence sometimes was psychosomatic and many times was physiological. Actual changes took place. Example, Lazarus lay in the tomb 3 days. And during that time, his body rotted just like any human body that isn't embalmed will rot for 3 days. And this was a technological tour de force when they reconstructed Lazarus' body. This is a much tougher thing, technically, than to resurrect Lazarus. And to show what a perfect job they did, he died a second time of the same kind of thing later on. They rebuilt him, including the weakness.
That was a life carrier to rebuild.
And that's the physical controllers. I think some people that thought they were sick thought they were well. But I think other people who were sick were healed. Consider the widow's son at Nain. He wasn't dead, but Jesus got credit for a resurrection.
And Peter's mother.
Sure. But Lazarus was really dead. Good and dead. Yeah, thinking dead. If Jesus were here, it would work, but it won't work with him not being here.
I was on last week, weren't I? See, I'm working
You
last
see, there's so many articles appearing in all the magazines now, and there's much of this talk going on, and there's conversations that they have to do, and every so often we have to do.
First, can I get to the philosophy behind this? In the faith of Jesus, they give me a key to understanding that I've shared with many people that I haven't even told about the book. It's this, that when you take reality and divide it up, it divides functionally into thing, meaning, and value. It's in the last couple of pages in your answer book. And these three realities operate with different laws. I remember talking to a Christian scientist, wife of a college professor, friend of mine, and we compared notes, and she only believes in one kind of energy. And in Urantia terms, this energy would be about 80% mind and 20% spirit emulsified. And since she believes in only one kind of energy, there's only one set of laws that operate. But I believe in three energies. And the laws of matter are not the laws of spirit, out here in time and space. And the laws of mind differ from both. If I want to produce a material effect, I do not pray. I use reason, mathematics, and science to set up a material cause. And if I'm skillful, I always get a material effect. It never fails. I use reason, mathematics, a scientific approach. If I'm in the department of values, mathematics is blind as a bat. What is the amplitude of love? What's its mass, its hue, its rate of propagation?
wavelength?
What's its wavelength? Yeah. It's ridiculous. Love doesn't come by material quantity. Parents have a child, they love the child. They have another child. Where does this additional love come from? If they're careless Protestants or practicing Catholics, they may have a large family. And still they have plenty of love for each child.
Oh.
Now, this doesn't work on the budget. When you get down to money, there's only so much money. But there's never just so much love. I have faith in the Department of Values. That's my technique. And I generate a religion. I am totally unafraid of this universe because my father happens to be the boss. But this is strictly in the Department of Values. I carry quite a lot of life insurance, and especially heavy travel insurance. Because as I've told my wife, honey, I can't guarantee to come home, but if I don't, you'll be a rich widow. You'll have plenty of offers saved. Sure. To me, those are two entirely different attitudes. I trust God. But I don't think God gives a hoot whether I catch it on the way down to Dallas Sunday night or I live for 40 years. I don't think He cares.
You can't afford it.
I do.
I don't.
I don't think God does. I think other people may.
No, I think God does.
Other personalities.
Fragment of your thought.
Other personalities.
No, I don't think the South Gesture
You don't?
cares. No.
Because
He's concerned about my relationship to God only.
Yeah, but if you've got potential,
Kind of hanging out there without
No,
anybody.
no. I think maybe let's assume, Mary Catherine, let's assume that this should be written. I don't know whether this is ego or truth or what. I'm writing it anyway. I can see where some of the planetary people here might feel real bad if this didn't get written. And I've made arrangements to make sure that it will be written if anything happens to me. I mean, I'm like David. I got a second in command appointed with instructions. And I'm not afraid of it now. Enough of it's written so that it could be finished. This, I think, might be important to them, but not to God. There's no past or future to God.
I'll follow you there.
The thought adjuster isn't time conscious. Just distant from God conscious.
say that again.
The thought adjuster is not time conscious. Just distant from God conscious.
I think
You're
you
conscious
care.
only being away from God.
We're a long ways away from God.
Still,
I know we are.
What?
I think you care.
What?
A little guardian angel.
Oh, sure. Sure, the guardian angel might care a great deal. Guardian angel is a time being. Midwares might care. All kinds of folks down on the planet might care.
They
But
care
not God.
if we hadn't done it.
God's timeless.
Actually, that's
Now,
good. I mean,
look. In their pure estate, values and things don't touch. They just don't touch. they both touch a middle zone, meaning. And here, you don't use reason, you don't use faith, you try to use logic. And here is where you have a thrilling opportunity to try to work out a philosophy which will reach out on the one hand to things and on the other hand to values and try and reconcile them. I've been put to the test on this a few times, Mary Catherine. I remember many, many years ago when my children were quite young, and my daughter came down with double pneumonia. And she was a real little tyke, and we didn't have penicillin in those days. And I got booted out with my son William, and the department was turned into a hospital. My good aunt was over there, with her sleeves rolled up. That child was pretty sick. And I remember going outside, and there was snow on the ground. Stars were very bright. Little Willie was getting himself pretty well soaked in the snowdrift. And I wanted to pray. And I said, all right, Buster, the blue chips are down on the table. You want to practice a little magic? You want to ask the Creator to suspend a few natural laws? And it's revolting to me, because I know better. This is an effort to practice magic. To ask God for a special deal. You know, I want a special discount. We'll do this one under the table, and if you'll do this for me, I'll do this for you. Oh, I had all the urge, Mary Catherine. And I said, no, we're in the Department of Things. I believe this. I get the best pediatrician in town on the job. We're doing every material thing that can be done to combat a material problem. And this is the way I think I should look at it. But I said, I still want to pray. And then it hit me. No permanent damage could befall that baby. Death is not permanent. And then I could pray intelligently. I've never been so damn thankful in my life that the universe is set up so that no permanent damage could be done. The prayer I prayed was one of thanksgiving. But it's such a temptation to try to practice magic.
You know, I find it very hard to pray for people who are ill.
Bill, I'll tell you why I can't see this is right, this is maybe the most important one. I think it's between God and the person who knows. I would be trying to put my will in without it being God.
Sure.
I wouldn't do it for myself. So
But now look, let's beware of this now. Don't ever take prayer away from a person.
I'm going to do that, but I don't want to.
When you find somebody praying, trying to practice magic, you let them practice magic now. Because better they talk to God for a bad reason than they stop talking to Him. And be as wise as Jesus was at Joppa. When Gedaliah asked him, do you suppose the big fish really swallowed Jonah? Never subtract a person's reason for righteous living until he's ready to outgrow an old reason for a new truth. Never take anything away from anyone. Remember Teherma, the Persian, who came to the Pella camp, talked to the 12, packed his bag, he was going home. And they had the wit to bring him to Jesus. He talked to Jesus, he unpacked him, and he stayed. Now, they don't tell us what the 12 said, but I've tried to reconstruct it. And I can imagine he got up against a theologically minded guy who said, now, the first thing you got to do is get rid of this fire worship. And this, of course, was offensive. It would be just like saying to a Christian, now, let's get rid of this cross business that you folks are, idolizing. Jesus probably said to him, Teherma, the ministry of the divine spirit is like the purging flame which burns away the dross in human nature and leaves only the pure gold of character. He speaks favorably of the flame and to Hermann Thanks. Or if you're talking to a Chinese of that time, why not use good semantics and say, God is the honored ancestor of all men. The primal ancestor.
What?
The primal ancestor, the first ancestor. I have a great feeling of tenderness for people whose philosophy is immature. I remember an old Negro who used to stand guard in front of the office of the president of Standard Oil, William Oxford. And I cooled my heels out there occasionally when I had business to do with the old man. We talked. I remember old Oxford telling me about somebody being adrift out in the Pacific, and at a time when all hope was gone, some bird lit. And they got the bird, and they ate the bird, and it gave them the strength to live one more day, and they were rescued. He said, isn't it wonderful the way God looks after people in distress? I don't think God had a thing to do with that bird. But I just said to William, isn't it wonderful? Because this added to Oxford's faith. Yeah, I'm not going around subtracting from people. This is an evil thing to do, I think.
Don't build on life.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard not to do that too.
But Mary Catherine, if you'll think of singing and value, such simple little words, and I find it helps me tremendously in thinking straight about life. I just avoid a lot of confusion. Where am I? Which department am I doing business in? See, they got different rules and regulations in these three departments. And if I want to produce a result, I got to work in different ways. If I want to love people more, there's no use working arithmetic about this. You pray for this. The only place I know to get any more love is to ask the source of love for more. If I want to get to Oklahoma City, I think I should call the Holden Travel Agency. And I don't think the wings of prayer are going to move me 1 inch off my backside to Chicago. Now, when I try to understand this difference, now I'm in the middle ground. Why is this different? What does it mean? Now I'm philosophizing.
Still, don't you think that there's a great deal of trouble with people what department they're in, and they don't want to face what department?
That's right.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't realize what I've been listening to good.
Now, if you take a real childlike person like the Alpheus twins, and they believe, and they have a real firm faith. It's so simple. They just are going to accept the things that happen, and they're going to put up with them, and they're going to keep right on believing, and they're going to make it without any philosophy at all or any science.
To whom do you pray, Bill?
A very few times in my life I've talked to God. Very few. Usually when I think my gas tank is empty, and I'm right in the middle of going up a big hill. Mostly, I don't pray. Mostly, I talk, and I talk to my partner. This is a very frequent occurrence. I've only prayed a few times in my life. Seriously. Mostly, I talk to my partner, and I say, now look, Joe, how are we going to do a better job in this thing? See, I mean, you're in this with me. I like to be more useful.
Well,
Or I may just talk to him.
Generally speaking, that's true.
Yeah. But a few times, once or twice in my life, I've tried to talk to the boss.
Whether you say Jesus,
No,
Father, or God,
I
I
agree.
don't think it matters.
I agree.
If there's a fair channel.
Yes.
Well, I don't care that matters either.
They got a good sorting office for mail that's misaddressed.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
They open it up and say, well, he don't mean Joe, he means Pete.
And Harry says you can't get caught up yourself.
That's right.
There you go.
Mostly I talk to my
Still,
partner.
if you spoke to God and your prayer was answered by God, it sound right back down through the same
Sure.
person that if you were talking to Jesus.
Well, so that's, I got it probably.
I'll tell you this, Mary Catherine, I've consistently all my adult life prayed to be useful. And I think that's why I've been no stranger to tribulation. I think I've kept it coming. And there's been a great temptation to stop that damn prayer, you know what I mean?
Still, in the last 4 years, I think I have prayed more for strength to love others.
It's a good prayer.
Greater love. And it is something
This is good.
much.
This is good. That's a very legitimate prayer, I think.
And my prayer for those who are ill is that God will give them mercy and strength and point. But to just ask God to keep them out here, I just can't.
No.
I don't
Live here.
I think
You
that-
think that there's any limit, you mentioned here material, limit to material energy. Do you think there's any limit to spiritual energy? I mean unselfish spiritual.
No. No.
I notice here you go night and day a lot of times. You seem to be.
I get damn tired too.
many times too, bless you.
Well, I know, but look how much he gives. Look how much he's giving.
And as long as he's giving, I think you'll be all right.
Well, that's mostly I meant.
Oh, sure you are.
This variety is dreadful.
You said there was no limit to love. Well, there's no limit, I don't think, to spiritual love. I've seen that so many times in my life with people who were very sincere, trying to do something, never giving all the time. I'll tell you, like they had an unlimited energy. I have seen that sometimes in my life. Not
There's no
all.
limit to love, but there's limit to action.
Yes, I think
That
that's
involves,
right.
you get your body involved now. Going back to prayer, Mary Catherine, let's not leave this too simple. Prayer is psychological as well as spiritual. Now let's say that, let me be a person who believes that I can honestly ask God for anything that's not hurtful to someone else. I'm ethical, but I'm confused about thinking and value. And I want a promotion. I want it real bad. I missed it the last time. I can see it's going to open up again a couple years from now. And every night I'm on my knees asking God for help to get this job. And I'm praying with total sincerity. This can have a very powerful effect right on the intellectual level in sparking my own purely human resources, so that I may think God has answered my prayer, and I may be answering my own prayer. Because when you pray, you're dealing with mind as well as spirit. And this can produce,
I dig you all the way.
this can confuse the issue like nobody's business.
Yeah, but I don't think you can sit down and ask God for something.
But
and not some
here's
effort.
the thing that I was asked when I said,
If you're doing it sincerely, you're apt to work harder at it too. That's my point. This thing repercusses on a sub-spiritual level.
but if you're doing it sincerely, you know you've got to do your part.
Yes, yes,
You won't ask something for nothing. then.
yes.
No, you will not.
And I think in the act of praying, you're apt to think more clearly. Now, I kind of envy people who can do that. I can't.
Well, now that's what I'm not, I used to do that
I know.
before I got
Before you got converted.
You can't do it now, can you?
And this book took something away from me.
Right.
And it was a long time before I could get my balance.
Yes, this is correct.
I missed that.
Pray for material help.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
something
Mary Catherine, where did that thing away from?
I didn't know I couldn't
Were you
pray.
beginning to deal with
And I didn't know who I could pray to whom I could pray.
Yeah.
So it took prayer away from me. In fact, Bill said if anybody prays and believes in it, don't take it away from them. Well,
Not unless they're unhappy with
Well,
it.
it has to be.
Not unless they're unhappy with it.
So it's been proving that it's not going to bring those material things, and you know that it isn't right.
That's right.
Well, I wasn't praying just for material.
Her old
I was doing it
prayer, to me, is like something like Bill said, he talked to his partner. Well, prayer to me was talking to the Lord, in that
Sure.
day, or to my
I
God.
think that's very much
my
in order.
God.
Yes.
You understood.
And then all of a sudden, I didn't know who I was talking to. There wasn't anybody there to talk to.
Yeah.
You'll scared too, isn't it?
It really is.
I know I've
It
been
is.
there.
I would think that your answer would teach you more how to properly pray.
Yes.
It's full of it. It does.
Well,
But I
it-
didn't get him to get my
What
God.
does prayer mean?
But it took away that thing that you knew you really shouldn't be doing.
I know. Why shouldn't I have been doing it?
Why should you say, I need a parking place for a bed if I'm dying?
No.
I know people that do.
No, you
Don't
can.
think
know
God
people
didn't
do.
answer their prayer until you got there.
Mary Catherine, I talked to my partner about
You
inconsequential.
understand what I'm talking
Yes,
about?
I do. Sure. You talk to your thought adjuster that way now.
Oh, is that what we do?
I talked to my partner about inconsequential because I think the ideas I'm expressing are not nearly as important to my partner as the fact that I'm showing him some attention. Uh,
That's what I...
one of the folks in Chicago was asking, he's got a 7-year-old. And he said, well, what do you talk about? I said, anything. And I said, look, you take your son to the zoo. And I said, he babbles away. And I said, are you really interested in the intellectual content of his discussion except as an indicator of mental progression? I said, no, but you're enjoying the fact he's showing you some attention. You're his father. I said, I think an adjuster feels that way about us. It's the attitude that could give pleasure to your partner. And I think that's a nice thing to do, to give pleasure to your partner.
Well, don't you think that that is just about right, the overall sense? Is your attitude toward a thing and
Sure.
toward who or what?
What do they say are the keys of the kingdom? Sincerity. You start with an attitude. Then you do something. It means you learn something. This then becomes inestimable.
After having tried my way, it didn't work. I tried the way I thought it was taught. I can pray for it, the noise is progressive, and hard to and I don't do this, and I said, I like to put it scared. I don't know what else to do.
You could pray to be useful.
Well, I do that.
Sure. Because if you follow God's will, you will be useful in some way or
I
other.
idea, if you're in God's word, you won't be set on your
That's right.
imagination. Bill, I think our coffee break's over. You when we have a coffee break? One space and math that I'm quite interested in. That's all. That'll be. All right. Would you like to try it for us?
Well, it's the discussion of the size of the universe. Do you want to hear it?
It's in the baby.
All right.
I made a note if you went by. She was reading them things. And fourth creatures. You got that back?
Let me read Fourth Creatures first. That's a
Fourth
little
creatures
cutie.
first.
That's a short one.
What is better read?
Well,
You weren't listening to the, what is, read now on the, fourth creatures first. Fine, Lord. What do you mean I wasn't reading? I mean, let's.
well,
I think it's kind of like this. Send your little deal on, Bert.
you'll have it. This is appendix number 8, entitled Fourth Creatures. Gregor Johann Mendel, 1822-1884, was an Austrian Augustinian abbot who discovered one of the basic laws of inheritance in plants and animals. What he discovered is a law of chance that seems to govern whenever there is interaction between two factors that are different in nature. Mendel's ratio is encountered in the papers in the narrative of the origin of Avona cervidals, universal conciliators, secondary midwayers, and is probably involved in the modified manner in the origin of cherubim and sanibim. Section 1, Mendel's ratio, a law of chance. There is nothing mysterious about Mendel's ratio. It is simply a law of chance. It can be demonstrated very easily with 8 checker pieces and a man's hat. 4 of the checker pieces should be of one color, and the other 4 of the contrasting color, say white and black. Put all 8 in the hat and draw them out 2 by 2 so that there are 4 pairs of checkers. If this is done for a number of times, a dozen times or 100, it will be observed that the pairs of checkers average out for each group of 4 pairs as a double white pair, 2 mixed pairs, and a double black pair. When I was a kid, I did this all one afternoon and kept score. It worked. We can express this in the following manner. WW plus WB plus WB plus BB. This is nothing more than an algebraic relationship. If you multiply A plus B by itself, you get A squared plus 2AB plus B squared. Or to write the answer in a more recognizable form, AA plus AB plus AB plus BB. Mendel worked this out with peas, tall ones and short ones. What we have been looking at is the second step in his experiment. The first step is the crossbreeding of the talls and the shorts. The first thing that Mendel discovered was that one of the 2 factors, tallness, would completely cover up the other factor, shortness. All of the crossbred peas were tall. This ability of one inheritance factor to cover up another one is called dominance. And conversely, the tendency to be covered up is called recessiveness. In the case of the peas, tallness is dominant and shortness is recessive. When the 2 are crossed, all of the first generation are tall. They look tall, but they actually carry a submerged short inheritance factor. The presence of the submerged short inheritance factor is demonstrated in the second generation with a working out of Mendel's ratio. TT plus TS plus TS plus SS. Here we are using a capital T to indicate the dominant tall factor and a lowercase s to symbolize the recessive short factor. Mendel's ratio is a ratio that is expressed as 3 to 1. 3 talls for 1 short. But the 3 talls are not alike. They all look alike, but only one of them will breed 100% tall peas. The other 2 will continue to breed out in the 3 to 1 ratio, thus demonstrating that they carry both dominant tall and recessive short factors of inheritance. The papers do not speak of Mendel's ratio, or a 3 to 1 ratio, but they do use the term 4th creatures. This refers to a type of being where every 4th creature is in some way different from his fellows. Page 273, paragraph 12, 274, paragraph 1, 275, paragraph 5, 422, paragraph 7, 423, paragraph 5. The use of this term, 4th creature, is nothing more than a rephrasing of Mendel's ratio. 1 out of 4 is the same as saying 3 to 1. Section 2, Spirit Dominance, Servitals and Conciliators. Spiritual and physical realities seem to exhibit varying degrees of dominance and recessiveness in relationship to each other. In non-personal situations in time and space, physical realities seem to dominate. In personal situations that involve the expression of divinity of purpose, spirit mind, is dominant over the physical, all in proportion to the attainment of divinity of purpose. Page 484, paragraphs 1 to 4. Abona servitals. These beings are of joint origin in the 7 master spirits and their physical associates, the 7 supreme power directors. Page 273, paragraph 11. This is a clear-cut interaction of spiritual and physical inheritance factors. The results of this interaction are exactly in accordance with Mendel's ratio of 3 to 1, page 274, paragraph 2. In this instance, the relationship of the 2 factors could be expressed as SS plus SP plus SP plus PP. 3 servitals are spiritual in appearance, and 1 is quasi-physical, a 4th creature. But are all 3 of the spiritual servitals really alike? From Mendel's ratio, we may deduce that one of the 3 is really different from the other 2. Is there any evidence to support this deduction? There is. Servitals are often assigned to super-universe service, and upon returning therefrom, are sometimes embraced by some deity presence on paradise. Page 271, paragraph 2. almost 1/4 of the cervitals that are so embraced do not emerge, but apparently transmute to another and higher order of being, the graduate guide. Page 271, paragraph 3 to 6. It is quite significant that just about 1/4 of the cervitals transmute, and we believe that these are the cervitals that have double spirit inheritance. It's quite significant that just about 1/4 of the cervitals transmute, and we believe that these are the cervitals that have the double spirit inheritance. Apparently, this process has no effect on the cervitals that carry a mixed set of factors. Universal conciliators. The origin of conciliators is a superuniverse reflection of the central universe origin of cervitals. Page 275, paragraphs 1 and 2. This being the case, the conciliators have the same basic inheritance of interacting factors of a spiritual and a physical nature. Since the conciliators are grouped by 4s for service, Mendel's ratio is not hard to detect. Conciliators appear to have the following inheritance: SS plus SP plus SP plus PP. One of them is the unanimous choice of the other 3 to act as judge-arbiter, the head of the Commission of 4. We believe that this is the conciliator with a double spiritual SS inheritance. One conciliator is by obvious physical nature, the divine executioner. This is the conciliator who has the double physical, PP, inheritance. The other 2 conciliators fill the remaining 2 positions on the Commission. Page 275, paragraphs 5 to 7. Page 276, paragraphs 1 and 2. Section 3. Physical dominance. The children of Adam ben Adam. When Adamson and Rata procreated their kind, this union represented the combination of 2 mortal but superhuman strains of inheritance. They had 67 children, and every 4th child was different from the rest. It was often invisible. Page 861, paragraph 6. These 4th children were the immediate procreators of the secondary midwayers, and so far as we know, the secondary midway creatures were the only progeny of these 4th children. There were 16 of these unique children. Here we have an example of physical dominance, which could be expressed as, and now we're using a lowercase s and a capital P, because the P is dominant. SS plus SP plus SP plus PP. The double S combination would be a 4th child. This relationship is almost 1 to 3. It works out as 16/67, which is 23.88%, just a little more than 1% short of the theoretical 25%. Now this raises some interesting questions, especially concerning the nature of Hellenic culture, for the Adamsonites were among the progenitors of the Greeks. Page 895, paragraphs 3 to 6. Consider the direct line human descendants of Adamson and Rata. This human stock suffered the loss, the permanent loss, of a normal human spiritual potential factor amounting to 23.88% of what should have been normal for their group. This means that the remaining human reproducing strains, as they presumably intermarried, eventually possessed only 76.12% of normal spiritual growth potential. There was no diminution of intelligence, only the loss of that potential for spiritual growth, represented by the 16 4th children who bred the secondary midwayers and whose strain was biologically lost to the human race. Does this explain why Hellenic culture was so brilliant in the fields of art and philosophy, but always seemed to be somewhat backward or retarded in the field of religion?
What do you think?
I think it is. I can't prove it. Seems reasonable. See, by the time the remaining progeny intermarried, they would spread out the spiritual inheritance. But they've only got about 3/4 of the normal complement to work with. So they're a little bit shy. They're not zero in this area. They're just missing about 25% of what they should have had. Certainly, the story of the evolution of religion in Greece is not the glorious story of the evolution of art and philosophy. As you consider what the Jewish people did with religion as compared to what the Greeks did. The Greek religion never really got off the ground very far. Section 4, Cherubim and Sanibim. Cherubim and Sanibim are another order of being that is characterized by fourth creatures, page 422, paragraph 7. Here, however, we encounter something of a mystery. The ministering spirits are created by the local universe mother spirit, and accordingly have only a single inheritance, page 286, paragraph 3. In each of the other instances, servitals, conciliators, and Adamsonites, we've been dealing with the interaction of two sets of inheritance factors. With cherubim and sanibim, there's only a single inheritance factor. How can this be explained? We are informed that material sons, the Adams, represent a creator son, last concept of being, and that their appearance in dual form, male and female, confirms the dual origin of the creator son, page 415, paragraph 2. A creative spirit is of single origin, page 203, paragraph 7, but she works in both physical and spiritual domains. In the early history of a local universe, as a physical organizer, and later on as a spiritual creator, page 374, paragraph 2 to 4. Cherubim and sanibim appear to represent a creative spirit's last concept of being, so far as concerns the ministering spirits. Is the dual inheritance factor that is seemingly in their nature a reflection of this dual function, physical and spiritual, in the creative spirit? Regardless of the validity of this line of reasoning, the cherubim and sanibim are characterized by fourth creatures, by Moranchic cherubim. We can express their inheritance factors as SS, FM, SM, and MM, where the capital S stands for the dominant spiritual inheritance, and the lowercase m stands for the recessive Moranchian inheritance factor. It is interesting to note that cherubim and sanibim are classified in three groups: ascension candidates, mid-phase cherubim, and Moranchian cherubim, page 423, paragraphs 2 to 5. We would speculate that the ascension candidates would constitute about 1/4 of the number, and would be those with a double spiritual inheritance. We know that the Moranchian cherubim account for 1/4 of the total number, and they, of course, would have the double Moranchian inheritance. The remaining 1/2 would appear to be truly mid-phase in nature, having a mixed inheritance, and thus functioning as typical or average cherubim and sanibim. Want to turn it off? One of energy magnitude. And frankly, my math isn't that good. But Bud took a statement out of these papers and derived the Einstein's formula from it. What is it? E equals mc squared or something like that?
But it works.
Yeah.
No, man, but I got it second on my own, and that's just part of that.
Is any of this completed yet on this energy magnitude?
Not on energy, no. Bud's writing that one. I can't write it. I'm not up to that. This is Appendix 16, Space and Mass Magnitudes of the Master Universe. The papers give just enough in the way of information to make it possible to calculate the magnitude of the Master Universe. The calculations made in this appendix are based on two groups of data: information concerning distances and information concerning the mass of physical creation. Information pertaining to distances, space magnitudes. Page 358, paragraph 8. The radius of Orvantan is just under 250,000 light years. Deduction. The transverse diameter is around 500,000 light years, twice the radius. Page 130, paragraph 1. Between the superuniverses and the primary space level is a quiet zone that averages 400,000 light years in width. Around 500,000 light years from the periphery of the superuniverse, there is a zone of energy activity that grows in intensity for over 25 million light years. This is all in the primary space level. Deduction. If this zone increases in intensity for over 25 million light years, then it is logical to deduce that it decreases in intensity for another 25 million light years. We deduce that the transverse diameter of the first outer space level is on the order of 50 million light years. Page 130, paragraph 2. More than 50 million light years beyond the activities of the primary space level, the Uversa-physicists have observed still greater energy activities. These are preliminary to the physical development of the secondary space level. Information relative to physical creations, mass magnitudes. Page 129, paragraph 9. Havona plus its dark gravity bodies is more massive than all 7 superuniverses. This is due to the enormous mass of these encircling dark gravity bodies. Page 132, paragraph 2. Around 95% of the present gravity action of the Paradise Isle is occupied with the control of physical systems outside of the grand universe. Deduction 1. The figure of 95% is not reliable in comparing the physical size of the outer space levels with the physical size of the 7 superuniverses, due to the disproportionate concentration of mass in the dark gravity bodies encircling Havona. Could these dark gravity bodies be eliminated from the calculations, then the figure of 95% would be increased. Deduction 2. The mass of the grand universe is much more of a finished creation than are the newly organizing physical systems of outer space. The passing of time will further increase the figure of 95%. Page 354, paragraph 5. There are at least 70,000 physical aggregations in outer space, and each one is larger than a superuniverse. Page 130, paragraph 6. Someday our astronomers will see no less than 375 million new galaxies in the remote stretches of outer space. Question. Do the two statements first above refer to the same masses, or do they refer to different physical systems? We do not know. It is possible that the 375 million galaxies could be grouped into 70,000 aggregations. Assumption. This thesis will assume that the 70,000 aggregations are situated in the primary space level, and that the 375 million galaxies are in the more remote space regions. Section 1. Magnitude of the grand universe. It appears that the transverse horizontal diameter of the superuniverse space level is on the order of 1/2 million light years. If we want to determine the radius of the grand universe, we should increase that figure by an amount equal to the radius of Havona. The radius of Havona plus the transverse diameter of a superuniverse should equal the radius of the grand universe, the distance from the center of all things to the periphery of the superuniverses. Now, there are two problems that seriously hamper our calculations at this point. A, if we attempt to go all the way into the center of all things, we shall be going inside the inner margins of space itself. The Isle of Paradise is at the center of all things, and Paradise is not in space. B, the papers give no information whatsoever concerning the size of the central universe. What would happen if we chose to ignore Havona in these calculations? How does the space area of Havona compare with that of a superuniverse, say Orvonton? We know that Havona contains 1 billion worlds, and that Orvonton will eventually contain 1,000 billion inhabited worlds. And this takes no account of the myriads of uninhabited space bodies, suns, dark islands, cold and airless satellites, and so on. And then, the Havona worlds follow each other in linear procession, in 7 circuits. Such a systematic and non-collisional processional could be packed rather compactly in space, as compared with the more ample room required in Orvonton to accommodate the sometimes wild gyrations of the disintegrating nebula. Orvonton must be much more than 1,000 times the size or space volume of Havona. But even if it were just 1,000 times the size of Havona, then the radius of Avona would be only 1/10% of the transverse diameter of Orvonton. We submit that it is within reason to ignore Havona in calculating the radius of the grand universe. But even if we are wrong in doing this, even if Havona is very much larger in space area than we have estimated, we will shortly see that any significant error factor will be insignificant in view of the extraordinary magnitude that we will shortly encounter. This calculation elects to assume that the diameter of the grand universe is on the order of 1 million light years, and that its radius is around 1/2 million light years. Since we are going to encounter much larger numbers than these, it will prove very convenient to start right now to symbolize these distances. Let us assign a symbolic scale value of 2 inches to the diameter and 1 inch to the radius of the grand universe. Although this volume of space is not a sphere, we may choose to think of it as a sphere to facilitate concepts. We are now thinking of a sphere with a diameter of 2 inches, an undersized tennis ball. Suppose that we really should have assigned a scale value of 1 inch to the diameter of Havona. This would mean that the grand universe would be scaled at 3 inches instead of 2, and its diameter would be 1.5 inches instead of 1 inch. Section 2, magnitude of the primary space level. Does this bore you?
Oh, no.
In these calculations, we elect to ignore the semi-quiet zone that separates the grand universe from the primary space level. If the transverse radius of the grand universe is 500,000 light years, and that of the primary space level is 50 million light years, then we have a relationship of 1 to 100 on a linear basis. In other words, if we symbolize the radius of the grand universe by assigning to it the value of 1 inch, then on the same scale we must go out 100 inches to symbolize the transverse diameter of the first outer space level. This is roughly the relationship of 1 inch to 8 feet. The cubic relationship is even more striking. We have visually scaled the volume of the grand universe as compared to an undersized tennis ball, a sphere with a diameter of 2 inches. The radius of the grand universe plus the primary space level would scale at 101 inches, 100 inches plus an inch. The diameter of this volume of space would be twice the radius, 202 inches. This is approximately 16 feet. We may now visualize our tennis ball suspended in the middle of a fair-sized room, a room roughly measuring 16 feet by 16 feet and having a ceiling 16 feet high. This is like visualizing the tennis ball floating in the center of an old-fashioned high-ceilinged living room. A room 16 feet square will hold quite a number of people. How many tennis balls will it hold? We can be rather sure at this point that the primary space level is very much larger than the grand universe, the 7 superuniverses plus Havona. There are 10 master architects operating in the grand universe, 3 in Havona and 7 in the superuniverses. There are 70 architects functioning in the primary space level, but their scope of function must be vastly greater than the space range of the function of the grand universe architects. The mass magnitudes in outer space will support these estimates. Here are 70,000 aggregations of matter, and each is already larger than a superuniverse. And these domains are just getting started from a physical standpoint. 95% of paradise gravity is already occupied with the control of these and other outer space physical systems. And as these creations continue to grow in size, it would appear inevitable that more than 99% of paradise gravity will be required to exercise physical control. There are 375 million galaxies in the remote regions of outer space. We're not sure that this refers to the 70,000 aggregations of matter noted above. It may include these 70,000 physical systems and others that lie beyond the primary space level. Magnitude of the secondary space level. In attempting to calculate the magnitude of the second outer space level, we encounter an unknown factor. We have established a ratio of 1 to 100 in comparing the radius of the grand universe to the transverse diameter of the primary space level. The papers give us no dimensions concerning the secondary space level. They merely say that still greater energy activities are going on around 50 million light years beyond the first outer space level. This lack of information is going to force us to make some assumptions. We know that the space levels increase in size as we proceed outward. But what is the rate of increase? Is it a constant rate, or is it an accelerating rate of increase? We elect to choose the more conservative speculation. We elect to assume that the rate of increase is a constant one. I agree with you, Clive.
Thank you.
But I have nothing to hang my hat on. What's the rate of acceleration? This is bad enough. If you take the constant.
It's going to end up bad enough.
If the rate of increase is constant, then we can set down a double ratio. The ratio of the radius of the grand universe to the transverse diameter of the primary space level, and of the latter to the transverse diameter of the secondary space level. This ratio is 1:100 as 100 is to 10,000. In terms of our scale inches, we can symbolize this as follows. If the grand universe extends out from the center a distance of 1 inch, and if the primary space level extends on out 100 inches, and the secondary space level goes on out another 10,000 inches. This is the approximate relationship of 1 inch to 8 feet and of 8 feet to 800 feet. If the transverse diameter of the second outer space level is 800 feet, then the radius of the total universe from the center to the periphery of the second space level would be symbolized by 800 feet plus 8 feet and an inch. If we choose to ignore the two smaller distances, we may say that the diameter of the total universe considered thus far is on the order of twice 800 feet or 1,600 feet. To what object of familiar size may we compare this distance of 1,600 feet? Well, it is like a rather long city block. Try to visualize such a block. It contains 16 100-foot blocks on each side, quite comfortable sites for homes. Now I've tried to visualize the cube of this 1,600-foot city block. Remember that it's a rather long block. Now suspend the old-fashioned living room at the center of the cubic block. This is a 16-foot cube suspended in the middle of a 1,600-foot cube. Now float the tennis ball in the middle of the living room. We are visualizing the space relationship of the secondary space level, the city block, to the primary space level, the living room, and to the grand universe, the tennis ball. Section 4, magnitude of the tertiary space level. If we supply the fourth member of our 100-to-1 expanding space ratio, we have in terms of scale inches the following. 1 inch is to 8 feet as 8 feet are to 800 feet and as 800 feet are to 80,000 feet. Suppose we make the last number a little more manageable by converting it to miles. We can keep this number conveniently even by dividing by 5,000 feet instead of 5,280 feet. And this will give us a distance of 16 miles. This means that the transverse diameter of the tertiary space level is symbolized by a distance of 16 miles. If this is the case, then the diameter of the total universe that we have considered to this point is twice 16 miles, or 32 miles. How can we visualize a 32-mile cube? Well, we might try to think of a rather large city that has a surface area measuring 32 miles by 32 miles, and then try to project this surface 32 miles high. This cubic city is to the 1,600-foot city block as the tertiary space level is to the secondary. And inside the city block, we still have the living room, the primary space level, and inside the living room, we still have the tennis ball, the grand universe. Section 5, magnitude of the quartan space level. We've now come to the estimation of the size of the outermost space level of the master universe. And again, we may apply the relationship of 1 to 100 and continue the ratio to the fourth comparison. 1 inch is to 8 feet, as 8 feet are to 800 feet, and as 800 feet are to 16 miles, and as 16 miles are to 1,600 miles. If in terms of our scale inches, the transverse diameter of the fourth outer space level is 1,600 miles, and if we entirely ignore the diameters of the smaller and inner space levels, then we may say that the total diameter of the whole master universe must be on the order of twice 1,600 miles, or 3,200 miles. Just for comparison, let's consider what we've ignored in not considering the diameters of the inner and smaller space levels. If we add 1 inch to 8 feet, we have a distance of 8 feet 1 inch. Then 800 feet, and we have 808 feet and 1 inch. This is something less than 1/5 of a mile. Then we had 16 miles, and we had 16 1/5 miles. To get the total diameter, we double the number and come up with something less than 33 miles. This is a trifle more than 1% of 3,200 miles. We've thrown away about a 1% in our calculation just to keep it even. How can we best visualize a space volume that has a diameter of 3,200 miles? The space body that most nearly approaches this size is the Earth's moon. The moon has a diameter of around 2,100 miles, and we're trying to visualize a sphere that has a diameter of 3,200 miles. When we think of our 32-mile cubic city in the center of the moon, we are trying to feel the relationship of the tertiary space level to the quartan space level. Section 6, a summary of space magnitudes. Let us first recapitulate our original ratio in which we computed the transverse diameters of the space levels. The ratio is 1 to 100 to 10,000 to 1 million to 100 million. The scale inches are 1 inch to 8 feet to 800 feet to 16 miles to 1,600 miles. These symbolize the grand universe and the primary, secondary, tertiary, and quartan space levels. When we recapitulate on a volume basis, we must double the numbers given above to arrive at the diameters of the volumes concerned. We can recapitulate our volume relationships as follows: the grand universe, an undersized tennis ball; the primary space level, the 16-foot living room; the secondary space level, the 1,600-foot city block; the tertiary space level, the 32-mile city; the quartan space level, the 3,200-mile satellite, a larger moon. Turn it off, please. I can't go beyond the first space level on that. No data. This is Appendix 17, time magnitudes of the master universe. The papers have less to say about time magnitudes than space magnitudes of the master universe, but enough data are given to make possible some speculative calculations. We can work out the age of an old Uversa native, then the age of our Vantans, then the time span of the second universe age. After that, we can apply space magnitudes from Appendix 16 to time magnitudes and make something better than a wild guess as to time magnitudes of the post-supreme ages of the universes of outer space. Section 1, calculation of the age of a very old native of Uversa. Suppose we calculate the age of an Abandonner, a very old native of Uversa. We could calculate his age from the following data in the papers. Page 653, paragraph 8. 400 billion years ago, the Andronover Nebula entered upon a certain stage in its development. Page 654, paragraph 1. About 1 million years later than 400 billion years ago, Michael selected this nebula as his local universe. Deduction. We may use 400 billion years ago as the approximate time of Michael's arrival in what was to become his local universe. Page 392, paragraphs 1 to 3. When the Verandadeks had been created, then the Lananandeks were created, and exactly 12 million were brought into being. Deduction. The Lananandeks were created after 400 billion years ago, and they were all created at the same time. Page 654, paragraph 3. 200 billion years ago, Andronover entered upon another stage of its physical evolution. The oldest inhabited worlds in the local universe date from these times. Deduction. Lananandeks were created before 200 billion years ago. They function as system sovereigns and as planetary princes, and they would have to be functional before there could be any inhabited world. Page 618, paragraph 3. Time is relative. Take the case of Lucifer. 3 days of his long life would be like 300,000 years of human life on Urantia. But 3 days to Lucifer would be like 2.5 seconds in terms of life on Uversa. Deduction. 3 days in the life of Lucifer is proportional to 2.5 seconds in the life of a very old native of Uversa, our hypothetical Abendan. You know, they give us just enough. Any one of these factors are missing, we'd be dead. We may now begin our calculation of the age of a very old native of Uversa by determining the ratio of 2.5 seconds to 3 days. There are 3,600 seconds in an hour and 72 hours in 3 days. If we multiply 3,600 by 72, the product is 259,200. This is the number of seconds in 3 days. If we divide 2.5 into 259,200, the quotient is 103,680. We can now establish a ratio of 1 to 103,680 as indicative of the relationship of the lifespan of a very old native of Nebadon to a very old native of Uversa. Now, just how old is Lucifer? Or any Lananandek for that matter? We know that all Lananandeks were created at the same time, and that this time falls between two known dates, after 400 billion years ago and before 200 billion years ago. We elect to assume that the age of the Nebadon Lananandek dates from a time midway between these two dates. We assume that our Lananandeks were all created 300 billion years ago. We are now in position to complete our ratio. 1 is to 103,680 as 300 billion years is to the age of a very old native of Uversa. If we multiply 300 billion years by the factor 103,680, the product is 31,104,000 billions of years. Let us round this number off to an even 30 million billions of years. This is the age of our hypothetical Uversa Abundanter. We can otherwise express this number as 30,000 trillions of years. It is a number equal to 30 times 10 to the 15th power. The physical age of Andronover, a component nebula of our local universe, is just under 1 trillion years. Page 651, paragraph 5. We can accordingly state that our Uversa Abundanter is around 30,000 times as old as Andronover. Section 2, an estimate of the age of the superuniverse of Orvonton. Oh, this has been a ball. Just as the local universe of Nebadon is older than even its older natives, such as the Lananandek, so must the superuniverse of Orvonton be much older than our hypothetical Uversa Abundanter. The question is, how much older? Well, again, we can reason by analogy. If we take the age of Andronover as around 1 trillion years, then we can state that the first 60% of this time span had to do only with physical development. The administration of the local universe did not begin until Michael arrived, some 400 billion years ago. Suppose that we date the beginning of Nebadon's history with Michael's arrival. Then we can say that Nebadon is around 100 billion years older than Lucifer. This means a third again as old. We've computed the age of our Uversa Abundanter as 30,000 trillions of years. If Orvonton is a third again as old, then we should add another 10 trillions of years to the age of the Abundanter to estimate the age of Orvonton. This gives us a time span of 40,000 trillions of years for the estimated age of our superuniverse. Section 3, the time span of the second universe age. If Orvonton is already on the order of 40,000 trillions of years old, then what is the total time span of the second universe age? from the creation of the ancients of days to the settling of the time-space creations and light and life. The papers throw some light on this question. Consider the following. Percentage of inhabited worlds to projected inhabited worlds. We know that life is still being planted on the worlds of time and space. The superuniverses are still growing. Page 166, paragraph 9. The plan of the superuniverses provides for approximately 7 trillion inhabited worlds. Page 182, paragraph 8. The number of Urantia is 5,342,482,337,666. If we divide the registry number of Urantia by 7 trillion, we can determine what percentage of the projected inhabited world actually were inhabited by human beings as of 1 million years ago when Urantia was registered. This calculation gives a figure of just over 76%. In other words, in terms of the evolution of human life on the inhabited worlds, the 7 superuniverses are 76% started. Percentage of local universes that have been organized. Page 167, paragraph 1 to 5. The creative plan provides for 700,000 local universes. Page 166, paragraph 1. All projected local universes have not been organized. Page 366, paragraph 2. The number of our Creator Son is 611,121. Page 370, paragraph 8. Our union of days is numbered 611,121. Page 654, paragraph 3 to 4. 200 billion years ago, Nebadon was registered on Uversa as a universe of habitation. We deduce that Creator Sons and unions of days are assigned in serial order to the local universe space sites. If this is the case, then the local universe of Nebadon is the 611,121st local universe to be organized in the 7 superuniverses. Since there are just 700,000 projected local universes, we can compute the percentage of local universes that have been organized by dividing Michael's number by 700,000. By this calculation, we find that just over 87% of the projected local creations had been organized at the time Nebadon was recognized as an inhabited creation. This was 200 billion years ago. And in view of the size of the numbers we have already encountered, we may cheerfully ignore a small number like 200 billion. A variance in the percentage of local universes in commission. We've assumed that Creator Sons are assigned in serial order. This may or may not be the actual case. Consider the following. Page 266, paragraph 1. Circuit supervisors are not rotated in service. The circuit supervisor stationed on Salvington is number 572,842. This number, 572,842, would appear to belong to a series culminating in the total number of projected local universes, 700,000. If we divide the smaller by the larger number, we can again compute the percentage of local universes that have been commissioned. By this division, we arrive at a figure that is just under 82%. This is 5% less than the calculation based on Michael's numbers. Here again, we have no assurance that tertiary circuit supervisors are assigned in serial order. Percentage variances between inhabited worlds and local universes. By far the greatest difference thus encountered is the difference between the percentage of inhabited worlds, 76%, and the 2 percentages related to local universes, 87% and 82%. This difference must be due to the presence of many younger universes, such as Nebadon. We know that. Page 166, paragraph 5. A local universe is designed to have about 10 million inhabitable planets. Page 359, paragraph 6. Nebadon had 3,840,101 inhabited worlds at the time of the last registry. On this basis, Nebadon is a little more than 38% started, so far as concerns the appearance of human life on the worlds of time and space. And even within a local universe, the local systems may vary greatly in the number of inhabited worlds. Consider the following. Page 166, paragraph 3. A system is designed to embrace about 1,000 inhabited or inhabitable worlds. In the younger systems, comparatively few of these worlds will actually be inhabited. Page 359, paragraph 7. Satania has 619 inhabited worlds. From this, we may deduce that the local system of Satania is nearly 62% started in terms of inhabited worlds. This compares with 38% for the entire local universe of Nebadon. Some of the Nebadon systems are not nearly so far along as is the system of Satania. Other indices of Orvonton growth. There are two more citations that will help us in estimating the percentage of attained growth in Orvonton. Page 265, paragraph 9. On Uversa, there are 84,691 secondary circuit supervisors. Page 267, paragraph 6. Census Director number 81,412 is stationed on Salvington. Both of these numbers would appear to belong to a super-universe series that culminates in 100,000. They respectively suggest that Orvonton is 85% or 81% completed, so far as the assignment of these beings is concerned. A comparison of percentages. We're now in position to make a comparison of all the percentages that have been computed. 76% of a projected 7 trillion inhabitable worlds have developed human life. 81% of a projected 100,000 census directors of Orvonton have been assigned. 82% of a projected 700,000 tertiary circuit supervisors have been assigned. 85% of a projected 100,000 secondary circuit supervisors are on Uversa. 87% of a projected 700,000 assignable creator sons have been commissioned. While there is a variance in these numbers, it is still very interesting to note that they are all of the same general magnitude, running from a low of 76% to a high of 87%. Now, we've seen that the percentage relating to inhabited worlds can be misleading. We have 76% for the 7 superuniverses, but only 38% for our local universe. We can also raise a question as to the figure of 85% relative to the secondary supervisors. The papers state that this number are present on Uversa, but do not state that they are all in function. Now, as to the 87% figure pertaining to the number of creator sons that have been commissioned, it seems most likely that the Michaels are numbered in the serial order of appearance, but we cannot be equally sure that they are commissioned in that same order. If they are not, then the 82% figure relating to tertiary circuit supervisors could be a more accurate indicator of the number of local universes in commission. If this line of reasoning is correct, then we have two percentages, 81% and 82%, that are in very close agreement concerning the likely number of local universes that were organized in the 7 superuniverses when Nebadon was recognized as a local creation. For purposes of our calculation, we will adopt the larger of the two numbers, 82%. An application of percentages. Assuming that 82% of all projected local universes have been commissioned, this means that there are about 127,000 that will be commissioned in the future. Can we then assume that 82% of the second age lies in the past, and that about 18% is ahead of us in the future? We would venture that the figure of 82% is very much too low. The commissioning of a local universe is an event that is quite remote from the settling of that local universe in light and life. Perhaps the figure of 76% for the number of inhabited worlds out of 7 trillion projected would be a better number. Let us adopt this number, round it off to an even 75%, and say that somewhere near 3/4 of the second universe age is a past event, and that about 1/4 remains for the future. Now we've computed the age of Orvonton at some 40,000 trillions of years. If this number represents 3/4 of the second age, then we should increase it by 1/3 to arrive at the total estimated time span of the present universe age. This would mean an increase of 13,000 trillions of years. We can even this number off at 10,000 trillions and head it to the age of Orvonton to arrive at a total of 50,000 trillions of years. This is our estimate of the total time span of the second age. It is 50,000 times as long as the age of the Andronomer Nebula. Section 4. Proportional time magnitudes of the outer space ages. Our reasoning to this point has established a possible time span of the second age as 50,000 trillions of years. How is this number related to the time spans of the post-supreme ages of the outer space level? We would advance the idea that the second age is of comparative short duration when compared with the possible length of the outer space ages. This thinking is based on the calculations that were made in connection with estimating the space magnitudes of the master universe. See Appendix 16, Section 6, a summary of space magnitudes. In this calculation, we determined a ratio of size that worked out as 1 to 100. In other words, as we move out from the grand universe, each space level is about 100 times the size of the preceding one. Starting with the grand universe as having a value of 1, we can tabulate the relative magnitudes of the space levels as follows. The grand universe 1, primary space level 100, secondary space level 10,000, tertiary space level 1 million, quartan space level 100 million. At this point, we need to use exponents to express such very large numbers. It will be recalled that 10 to the third power is 10 multiplied by itself 3 times. This equals 1,000. 10 to the sixth power is 10 multiplied by itself 6 times. This equals 1 million. 10 to the ninth power is 1 billion. 10 to the 12th power is 1 trillion. And 10 to the 15th power is 1 quadrillion. We can now express the time spans of the successive universe ages as: the first age, the age of Havona, no time span. It is eternal. The second age, the present age, 50 times 10 to the 15th power. The third age, the primary space level, 50 times 10 to the 17th power. The fourth age, the secondary space level, 50 times 10 to the 19th power. The fifth age, the tertiary space level, 50 times 10 to the 21st power. The sixth age, the quartan space level, 50 times 10 to the 23rd power. If we wrote the last number out, it would be 50 followed by 22 zeros. This number is too awkward to handle. It would be like dealing with astronomical distances in terms of miles instead of light years. What we need is the time equivalent of the space measurement of light years. Why not devise one? The longest time span dealt with in the papers is the age of Andronover, just a little less than 1 trillion years. Suppose we adopt this as our basic time unit and give it the name Andronover Time Unit. We could abbreviate it as ATU. Now we can deal with long time spans more conveniently. The second universe age equals 50,000 ATUs. The third universe age equals 5 million ATUs. The fourth universe age equals 500 million ATUs. The fifth universe age equals 50 billion ATUs. The sixth universe age equals 5 trillion ATUs. It appears likely that the full development of the outer space levels is going to require a very long time. but they are quite large. Turn off.
What was the time magnitude?
Time magnitude is Andronover. Andronover is the longest time span the papers mention. Trillion years. This is Section 3 from Appendix 20. The adjustment of time creatures to eternity. Human beings begin to adjust to eternity right here on Urantia. We are time creatures, no doubt about that. But as we begin to mature, we begin our long adventure of escape from imprisonment within the evanescent values of the present moment. Page 1295, Section 1. Hardly anything is more permanent or more perishable than the present. As we progress in experience, and if we also grow in maturity, which is optional, then we begin to draw more and more deeply on lengthening past experience as a foundation for decision in the present. Simultaneously, we are looking farther and farther ahead into the future to calculate the effects of the decisions made in the present. This is the beginning of the association of the past and the future with the present. And as we grow older, we are able to grasp the meaning of longer time spans in the making of plans. If this is true in mortal experience, how much more true will it be of survival experience? How will we think when we can draw upon 1,000,000 years of past experience? When we have lived 1,000,000,000,000 years, we will be about as old as the Andronover Nebula. How will we plan then? By the end of the 6th age, at the beginning of the post-ultimate age, we have calculated that we will be 5 trillion times as old as Andronover. How will we plan then? This may all be doubled in terms of personal experience. Among other things, fusion with an adjuster adds past eternity experience and memory. Page 1237, paragraph 4. Suppose we are able to absorb this endowment only insofar as we have developed capacity. In other words, when we have lived 1,000,000,000,000 years, then we can grasp another 1,000,000,000,000 years of past eternity experience and memory from the adjuster. This adds up to 2 trillion years of past memory. This also means that we ought to be able to visualize ahead for an equal time span, another 2 trillion years. We have lived only 1 trillion years, but we have acquired a 4 trillion year time base with which to evaluate the present in terms of the past future. Now, if our calculations about universe ages are correct, then at the beginning of the post-ultimate age, we should be around 5 trillion years old. And we will be able to think, understand, and plan in terms of a time span that is 4 times as long. If our experiential penetration of time is at 4 times the rate of the passage of time, then we are bound to make progress in the quantitative comprehension of eternity. The qualitative feeling for eternity probably became a part of the ascender's consciousness at the time of transit from the inner Havona circuit to paradise. Page 297, paragraph 4, page 135, paragraph 4.
Still, we sure gonna be wrinkled
Yeah.
when we get there, aren't we?
Well, that's what do you mean get wrinkled? I mean, your planes are not, man. Feel so I feel like going like this, you know.
Well, Bill, this is the most inspiring thing of all, is this last thing. I was beginning to feel as though I hadn't arrived yet, even. But when you begin to compare what we have in experiences to help us.
You're going to pick up speed.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're moving 4 times, if comprehension is drawing at 4 times the rate of the passage of time, then you're going to be able to cope with some pretty long time spans. And when you can think, when at the end of the master universe, we are going to be able to think and feel and understand a time span 4 times the age of the master universe, we have made a small dent in eternity itself, I think.
You know, Bill, that word comprehension worries me because that's the key to paradise.
Yes.
Well, so far, and
You get better brains.
Mrs. Wilson has read to me, it's been rather discouraging because of the thought of all the hard work ahead.
This is
For
true, too.
this, with the experiences that you have to help you, you're really propelled into something.
Yes, you are. We grow.
Yes.
We get help too.
We measure up to the job.
I think that the hardest part of our ascension to paradise is right on the face.
Oh, my God.
I really do.
It may be on the mansion world.
You think it'll be harder on the next one?
Let me draw an analogy.
But you have more to do with.
Let me draw an
They
analogy.
got the pigeons up there still.
And built in you.
Look, every baby wets the bed. We all did. And presumably we were normal, and somewhere, I've forgotten how old it is, was it 1 year, 2 years? We get over it.
About 16 months.
16 months, fine. But there are those who have trouble with this later on in life. And let's say we have Joe. Joe goes to college. And by George, right in the fraternity house, Joe wets the bed. And you can imagine what his fraternity brothers are going to do about this.
Yeah.
Many of us, I fear, will arrive on the mansion world troubled with spiritual enuresis.
Beautifully put,
And we are going to do mammalian things up there that are going to just be mortifying. And I think some of our greatest suffering will be the stimulus that will help us finally outgrow the mark of the beast, if you please. There is where I think we will really suffer on the mansion world, for the same reason that a kid who wets the bed in the fraternity house is going to suffer in college. We're carrying over habits that are not in proportion. To that extent, I think the mansion worlds are like purgatory. But the suffering is internal, it's not external. Will know shame. Think how you're going to feel when maybe for the last time in your ascendant career, on the third mansion world, you really lose your temper and blow your stack. And once again prove that anger is like a stone hurled into a hornet's nest. And you're dealt with in kindness, and you shrink almost out of sight, you know.
Back under.
Yeah, and it may take that to eradicate temper from a human being. I'm not sure they're not going to eliminate pain from our experience as long as it has any evolutionary value. Just like the papers say, keep the profit motive until you have developed the service motive.
You know, Mabel's gonna have a broken leg up there if she meets another car running 80 miles an hour on the fancy world. They figure that's the...
They let you die, not be guilty.
Right.
Well, they make our greatest growth because they don't anyway but pain.
Amen and hallelujah.
I think until we get up to about the third mansion world, it takes us about that long to outgrow the whiplash or the stimulus. Somewhere in through the middle mansion world, they say we begin to develop genuine enthusiasm for the paradise ascent. We've outgrown the old whiplash. It's no longer needed, so it isn't used. But mostly, I think, we inflict it on ourselves. We know shame. When we exhibit procrastination, equivocation, etc., up there, as our sense of values grows, we're going to get more and more ashamed of those things that we shrug off down here. And there are a lot of traits that we have down here that are not out of proportion to this world. Just as a little baby is expected to wet the bed. And if he goes a month dry and in the 17th month does it again, this is no great tragedy. This may be the last time he'll do it.
Henry Drummond says that love will overcome everything, and particularly like his, and I know the brother has his remark on overcoming temper.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah, it feels me that because I have in the past had such a temper. But we all have tempers, but anger. Well, I will say anger then, maybe the word for myself.
I think, Wilma, that what happens up there is anger transmutes into something positive and good. You see a situation that used to make you mad, and now it just stimulates you to be helpful. The same surge is there, but it's no longer negative. It's become positive.
Well, we have had that happen. You had it happen to yourself, where getting anger really strengthened you to reach an objective.
And I've also made an ass out of myself when I was mad.
Well, we won't talk about foot in mouth.
What?
Foot in mouth disease.
Oh, yeah, foot in mouth disease, definitely. Foot in pie.
There's one thing I wanted to repeat you. You said hardly anything is more permanent or perishable than what did you say?
Time, than the present moment.
Present moment.
It's always with you, and yet it's gone in an instant. I don't know, I was just writing it, and that's the way it occurred to me. It's permanent, and yet it's perishable. But as you relate the present moment to the past future, the greater the relationship, the greater the meaning and the value of the present moment. The less the relationship, the more hopelessly trivial the present moment becomes. How much purpose is there in the present? As you increase the content of purpose in the present moment then has real significance. Because you're drawing on the past, you're projecting into the future. This is the act of a mature person, in contrast to a child who happily lives in the present, as a child should. But this is not for adults, except in our play life. In our play life, what do? We disconnect the past, present, and have a good life. This is very refreshing to do. They encourage you. But this is not the way you live your whole life. Then you're a playboy.
Well, Bill, calculating on the first mansion world, I still don't believe somebody else is down here. I'll tell you why. Down here, we have before us every moment the contribution of making a living, a home, clothing, food, and so forth.
You're talking my language, woman.
I postulate that we will not have that on the mansion world.
Educating
On the mansion
children.
world, yes. On the mansion world, we
Tuition
will
is
have
not
a
tax
job to
deductible.
do. We will have a job to do and our spiritual life. Now, we have that same thing here, but I think our job up there will be channeled. and
I think
supervised.
this too, Wilma. Up there, we can depend on the advice we give.
Yes,
Down here,
we certainly.
sometimes it's a gamble.
Not sometimes, it's mostly again.
But gee whiz, you can. How old are some of these therapists? And some of them have been kicking around this universe for a long time. You might have a personal guardian who's a billion years old. This is a pretty wise hand. You talk to this therapist, and you will talk to her. You talk to her, and she said, "Well, I wouldn't do that if I were you." And so you go do it, you get burned, and then you come back. And the next time she says, "Well, now, I would advise against that."
And you listen.
And you probably listen this time. You probably listen. And you'll say, "Well, why?" Well, she said, "I can't quite explain it to you. You haven't learned another language yet, and you don't have any words in English."
You learn it through the pain of experience.
Sure you do.
That isn't parallel with down there. It is.
You know, they tell us we have group therapy down here.
Yeah.
But eventually we will all have person.
By the time you get through the matching rules, you will.
Well, does this group therapy just transfer the knowledge that they have about us to someone else into another therapist?
I don't know.
Because they talk
I really
about
don't know.
lifetime friends.
I have no opinion on that.
Well, I thought we lost the therapist when we refused about photography.
No, they go right on through.
They might even go say that.
All the way, at least to university.
But I wonder.
While we're on time,
I want to ask one question before we get off time. Go ahead.
can I read you a little bit more about time?
Right.
I find this concept helpful to me. This is another.
It's helpful to me.
This is section 4 in Appendix 20. Epoch in the post-ultimate age. This is the final age, the unending age. As we move in concept farther and farther from here and now, and deeper into the distant future, we are increasingly forced to speculate by the use of analogy. We would ask the question, what is it going to be like to live in the post-ultimate age, something that has no ending? Is the final age a straightaway drive into the utter vastness of unending eternity? We think not. Let us make a comparison of the seventh age with the epochs in the history of an inhabited world. The history of an inhabited world is divided into 7 epochs. Pre-planetary prince, post-planetary prince, post-Adamic, post-magisterial sun, post-bestowal sun, post-teacher sun, and the era of light and life. Each of the first 6 epochs has an ending, but the 7th has none that is definite. Does this mean that the era of light and life just goes on and on and on? No, it does not. The era of light and life itself is divided into 7 stages of progressive growth. Page 621, paragraph 5 to 11. Each of these stages, from the first stage to the 6th stage, has a definite ending in time. The 7th stage of light and life does not. We have the belief that the post-ultimate age will also be divided into stages, 7 of them, and that each one of the first 6 will have a definite end that will be represented by the attainment of a definite and satisfying goal. The 7th and final stage alone will be without an end. But what about the 7th stage of light and life on some perfected world? Could it not be further divided into sub-stages? 7 and each of the first 6 could set an attainable goal and could have a definite end. Only the last sub-stage would be endless. The same line of reasoning could also apply to the 7th stage of the post-ultimate age. This process can go on, and in this manner, endless progress can be punctuated by attainable goals, which become revealed as preliminary subdivisions of a final goal that is not factually attainable. I take comfort from that. I think that this thing eternity itself will be marked out by goals. And when you enter the 7th, you will discover you've entered the 1st of something new.
There's another 7.
Right. But now I think this. I have a distinct belief that the first stage of the final age is very, very much longer than the entire age of the Master Universe. Now I think we're dealing with a different order of magnitude. These are really big. Right. In the same sense, I've conceived of the cosmos infinite. When the Father and Son trinitized the Spirit, Ramona flashed into being. I think when the Supreme and the Ultimate trinitized God the Absolute, the innermost zone of the cosmos infinite will flash into being. Because this Supreme and this Ultimate are also almighty and omnipotent. And they will repercuss in the physical level as well as the spiritual. And I think the innermost zone of the cosmos infinite is to the Master Universe as the Master Universe is to the Grand Universe. Now I would project a series of tennis ball, moon, here's the big one. This is the beginning. This is the beachhead in infinity. That's big, Clyde.
Big Clyde.
This is big.
Right.
Or let's say maybe as a tennis ball is to the moon, as the moon is to the sun. That might not be a bad comparison. And that's just the innermost zone. That's where you get started.
With the relative perception and memory of a survivor today, and the earliest, as compared to the earliest survivor possible.
Yes, right.
When entering, say, the activities that are manifest on the 4th outer space level be so relatively insignificant that they both are just too brilliant personalities.
We will be contemporaries of Grand Fandango.
You'll be buddy of Grand Fandango.
That's right.
In fact, you'll schoolmate.
You want to know something? I think the natives of the Quartan space level will get Havona natives and super universes all
Yes,
confused with Paradise citizens. They're the people from the inner universes. They're from the core.
They're one and the same, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
In time, they're precisely one and the same.
Exactly.
You and Grand Fandango.
Exactly. Because it's like you remember when we figured what happens if we drop out these smaller dimensions?
Mm-hmm.
We're dealing with less than 1%, or just a trifle over 1%.
Get it from all ones, say they're from the red age to the blue age to the green age.
They're from the old universe.
Old universe.
They're from the inner universes.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm. They may even get us confused with natives from the 1st outer space level. In fact, sometime when you really get out there, they'll just say, well, this is a group of Master Universe citizens.
They're all the same.
Yeah. Quartan space level, super universes, Paradise citizens, they're all roughly contemporaries. They've been around a long time.
I'm saying we're all Americans, but the hundreds of citizens.
Would you say the animal?
You get the same feeling when a New Yorker and an Atlantean meet in Paris. There's no feeling of sectional difference now. They're both from the United States. They have a feeling of being neighbors, in Paris. In this country, They live a long ways apart. Pardon me, Bert.
I just wonder if you thought the other six chords of tonality are equally important.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
What was this again?
The other six tonality chords are of equal importance. I do. They'll do things in a different way. They're different beings.
Do you think the smaller natives would rather be in hours or 15 inches?
I think it depends on the Havana native. I think their choices are unpredictable. They're people. Their
On the
personality.
waiting list is the reason I asked.
Yeah. And the people get a yen for different things. And the Havana natives are personalities. They get intrigued with something, and this appeals to them. But I don't want to be a musician. I want to be a physicist, see? Or vice versa. What makes us this way? We're differently attracted to different pursuits, and of course that makes life interesting.
They tell us that there's anything that we have desired to do on this world that we didn't get to do, we will be able to do on the next.
Yes.
Well, Tommy Witherow always wanted to be a great architect, you know. That was always
Yes.
his ambition. And he looks forward to that very much. That's encouraging.
Well, I'm sure of this. If Tom's got the aptitude, he'll be a great architect. If he hasn't got the aptitude, they'll tell him so, but they'll still let him try. And they'll let him try until Tom himself is satisfied that he'd rather be a first-class something else than a second-class architect.